Hey y'all, welcome to our analysis and presentation of the second movement of Mozart's Horn Quintet in E-flat major, k.407.
The Mozart Horn Quintet conveys a plethora of romantic feelings, specifically in the Andante movement. It is said that Mozart used the Andante movement to convey his more romantic feelings as he was just newly married. The quintet's sonority has a great emphasis on the mellow middle voices such as the two violas and the horn. This mellow middle voice concept overshadows the bright upper register of the violin. It is believed that Mozart composed this quintet keeping in mind his lifelong friend Joseph Lütgeb. Lütgeb would have performed this on a natural horn. Immediately upon looking at a score, it can be confusing as to why the strings change keys from the first movement and the second movement, but the horn has no key signature in either movement. It simply says corno and E-flat at the beginning of the score. This means that the hornist would put the E-flat crook into their horn to give them the E-flat major harmonic series on their horn, which would facilitate playing a piece of this tonic sonority. Mozart makes a broad statement in the differences between the original phrase at the beginning of the movement and the recapitulation. In the first phrase, the violin and the first viola contain the most moving melodic material. And then comes the second viola part. However, in the recapitulation, Mozart gives the second viola part to the cello and composes a new part for the second viola to adopt a more complexifying role in the recapitulation. This leads the sixth measure of the recapitulation to have a 5 chord rather than a 2 chord from the beginning, as the modified viola part adds different harmonies, showing a bit more lenience towards dominance than in the beginning of the movement. In a typical string quartet setting, the violins typically carry the majority of the melodic material. However, the violin sound protrudes from the tone and timbre of the violas and horn, leading Mozart to feature the horn and violas more, alluding to the violin for more decorative features. Another concept Mozart repeatedly uses is he starts phrases with sustains in the upper voices, and then allows the lower voices to join in at a cascading effect with arpeggios upon the tonic.
Upon listening to and analyzing this piece, our group felt that the biggest aspect of it that stood out to us compositionally was the use of the parallel minor. Mozart borrows from the parallel minor to lead into a bigger picture idea, and it's really interesting to us because it has a certain feel and it really contributes stylistically to the composition.
Now, before we dive into specific examples in which Mozart incorporates the parallel minor in his writing, we want to explore the parallel minor in greater detail. Now, a major key is typically associated with two minor keys, one being the relative minor and the other being the parallel minor. And their major difference is their tonal center. Now, the relative minor is related to the major key because it shares a key signature, but has a different tonic note, whereas the parallel minor shares the tonic note with the major key, but has a different key signature. As you can see from our example, we have B-flat major and its relative minor, G minor, and parallel minor, B-flat minor. So G minor has a different tonic note, G, but it has the same key signature as B-flat major, which is 2 flats. The parallel minor, B-flat minor, shares the tonic note, which is B-flat, but it has a different key signature because it is actually related to D-flat major.
It's interesting that Mozart uses the parallel minor because it's something that we don't really expect. Typically, composers use the relative minor more because it's in the same key and it's easier to navigate between the relative minor and the major. The reason the parallel minor sticks out to us is because since it's used less than the relative, that's how we know it's special, and it kind of draws our attention into it.
Let's take a look at our first example. When we first listen to this excerpt, the minor chord at the end of this passage actually doesn't stick out to us as much as we'd expect. It does possess a sort of tension that is quite unique, and this comes because as the horn takes over the melody line from the violin, we actually expect it to remain in the tonic of B flat major, which is the key that we're in. Instead, we're hit with this minor chord, and if you take a look at the score on the screen, it's actually a minor 1/6 chord, and so it subverts your expectation. Instead of remaining in the tonic, it actually becomes the parallel minor. And when you analyze it further, you realize that it's actually a pivot chord between the key of B flat major and the new key of F major. And in F major, this chord plays a predominant role. It's a minor 4/6 chord, which leads to the 5 chord in the next bar. And so this chord not only subverts your expectations, but it also propels the music forward. And if you listen more closely to the music, you actually hear the lay to sol resolution in the bass. And that just creates an even stronger pull towards this new key. So Mozart cleverly uses this borrowed chord from the parallel minor to create this really special moment, and it's really only 1 bar long, but he uses this tension to both change our expectations in the music and to move this passage forward.
In our second example here, Mozart uses B flat minor once again. However, this example is different than the previous example in that he uses the parallel minor for much longer than just 1 bar, and therefore we feel it as a bigger event. One of these big characteristics of the parallel minor is the use of the major 6 chord that you see in the 3rd bar up on the screen. This major 6 is a different feeling and different tonality that really only comes with using the minor mode, and that really contributes to helping us feel this B flat minor. Another interesting aspect of this B flat minor here is that rather than leading into an F major as it did earlier in the piece, it leads into B flat major, which is the parallel major. And what's great about this is that this B flat minor actually takes us into the recap. Let's go ahead and give this excerpt a little listen. This is a pretty great segue for the next topic to come, which is how Mozart plays with our expectations.
Throughout the piece, there are multiple ways in which Mozart promotes anticipation. One of the ways is through the elongation of the dominant gesture. The elongation of the dominant is unique to hear and keeps the audience engaged to hear the arrival of the home key, which in this case is B flat major. Typically, gestures in second level analysis, at least from what we've seen, are balanced to a certain degree. In this case, the dominant is stretched out for so long that it builds up even more anticipation, and it serves as a section that draws people to it. Another way in which Mozart promotes anticipation throughout this piece is through quote-unquote mini cadences with fermatas. Mozart effectively uses short glimpses of cadences near the end of the piece to communicate in a defiant and dramatic manner that a conclusion is incoming. Now let's take a listen to the ending.